It's the Metro on WDET. I'm Robyn, Vincent. We begin with a crisis touching many different people. The war in Iran and the regional fallout is continuing. Without congressional authorization, President Donald Trump and Israel launched strikes that killed Iran's supreme leader and other military leaders of the current regime. And now, over 1,000 people have died in this war. Iran has retaliated, launching military strikes across the region. There is no clear path to peace. Neither Israel nor the U.S. have signaled that either have much interest in creating stability or democracy in Iran. Yesterday, I spoke with a Middle East scholar about what's happening in Iran and some of the different perspectives of the 92 million people living there. But there are a lot more voices to consider. What do folks from the diaspora who live in our region make of the situation? In the studio, I'm joined by Layla Sachi. She's an assistant professor of teaching at Wayne State University. Layla, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
I want to start, Layla, by your reaction to Israel and America's war against Iran. What do you make of this situation right now? Is this what you wanted to see? Because I understand that you have experience with the brutality of this regime. Can you talk about that?
I mean, I think I have to clarify that I don't have firsthand experience. We came to Canada when I was a year and a half old. My first memories are of growing up on a farm in Western Canada. I can't claim to have firsthand experience, nor can I claim to even understand what Iranians are really going through in Iran. The perspective that I bring is one of an Iranian who's grown up in the diaspora, who's traveled to Iran regularly, pretty much every year over the last 15 years, except for the pandemic year. I bring the perspective of an academic Iranian who, in my work, I'm both subject and object. I'm a philosopher, I'm a historian. I am necessarily critical of all perspectives that take a hard position one way or another on what's happening in Iran presently, because it is far more complicated than a simple regime change, as we have been hearing a lot of increasingly over the last year. As a philosopher, I believe that nobody is free until we're all free. As a historian, I'm acutely aware of how history keeps repeating itself. And I have a theory about why that's the case. I think we keep repeating history because we never really learn it properly to begin with. Even now, as people are calling for the return of a Pahlavi leadership of some kind, I mean, to be fair, the people who
Reza Pahlavi, the son of the Shah.
Correct.
Exiled here in the U.S.
Correct, yeah. When people are calling for his return and for his leadership, there are many different things that people mean. There are straight-up monarchists. There are people who are more democratically minded and just want him to come as a figure to unite Iran. But ultimately, whatever reason people have, it is short-sighted because the history with the Pahlavi regime is long and has a lot of evidence of it's a sordid past.
I want to go back to something that you said that, I mean, it resonates with me a lot. It's actually a sentence I have on one of my social media handles, which is that no one is free until we are all free. And I see you're wearing a T-shirt right now that says that as well.
You're giving me away.
I noticed it right when you walked in the studio, Layla. So for you personally, though, I mean, right now you are offering up a very informed take, some really vital analysis, because as you said, you are a philosopher, you are an academic, you study the nuance of all of this. But I want you to, for a moment, think about this just as a human and just as an Iranian American. And when you say no one is free until we are all free, this is a complicated sentence for Iranian Americans, I think, to hear sometimes, because the question is, what are the methods and means to freeing everyone? So your reaction, I guess, is what I'm getting at. What was your reaction just personally to hear about these strikes on Iran?
I was terrified. Yeah, I mean, there's no clear picture of what follows. I'll give you a couple of examples of what I mean. So I was talking to my niece, and she said, and she is pro this war, and she said, better to be bombed by a foreigner than to be killed by your own people. And
better to be bombed by a foreigner than to be killed by your own people.
Yeah.
What did that what was going through your mind when you heard that?
Yeah, so I thought, is this where we've come to? Where we think that these are our only two options? Is this what we've come to, where we think that we either have to associate with a genocider to get rid of a despot? I mean, that's morally ambiguous at best. I was listening to NPR as I was on my way to the studio, and they were interviewing a woman in Tehran, and she's talking about how difficult it is, not difficult, that's such an understatement, that what do people expect? Like, are they supposed to rush government agencies and military installations? I mean, thousands upon thousands of people are going to lose their lives. When Trump says, this is your moment, Iran, take it, I mean, what does that mean? How are people supposed to do that? Because in 1979, that was a popular revolution. The military, the Bazaris, it was a widespread uprising against the Pahlavi, Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, at the time. And it wasn't an Islamic revolution. It was co-opted by Islamic leaders after the fact. But that this revolution happened indicated the policies of the Pahlavi regime and the at the time. So my reaction, I don't know where this is going. I don't know what the end game is. I don't know how we can possibly achieve anything.
So when President Trump said, we're attacking Iran, Iranians, this is your opportunity to take back your country, I do want to acknowledge that, because you mentioned your niece, who it sounds like shares the perspective, which is, yes, we're ready. We're ready to take back our country at any cost. Do you understand where that perspective stems from?
Definitely. Definitely. In fact, my entire family, I would say, in Canada is of the view that this has to happen, that this is necessary. And, my sister-in-law was telling me, this was years ago, she was telling me about how she had to be vetted, that her religious credentials had to be vetted before she could get into university. That, even now children have to learn Arabic, they have to learn the Quran, they have to learn, that the rahbar, the supreme leader is like their friendly grandfather, and it's very propagandistic, and your children have to learn this stuff in public schools, even if you don't agree with it. I mean, this is oppression. Mm-hmm. And this is not even getting into all of the arrests and detainments and terroristic type of activities that this regime does in the country on a daily. And we're not even getting into the economics of it, where this regime has created separate classes, mm-hmm. The martyr class, where the families of those who died in the Iran-Iraq war are given a higher class and opportunities and education and jobs and so on over, everybody else. And so this, creates further division within the country. So I agree with all of that. Where I disagree is that this is the way to respond.
In other words, the ends don't justify the means here.
Exactly right.
I want to think about why exactly you feel that the ends don't justify the means. I mean, I know that you don't trust the global players involved, Israel and the U.S., and you want Iranians to have more control over their own destiny. And I think it might be hard for some people here who get to enjoy the safety of not having war on their land. It might be hard for people to envision the chaos and the violence that's happening right now. So for you, what would be the scenario that you would like to see in terms of getting power back into Iranians' hands right now?
I think that if we want to take advancing human rights seriously, then we have to strengthen our international institutions. We don't actually take human rights seriously in this country or in the world. After World War I, when Woodrow Wilson put out his 14-point plan, and one of those points was economic equality. Never came to fruition because the powers that be aren't interested in giving up that power. So there are these parallel discourses of capitalism, global capitalism, and human rights. And these parallel discourses are not consistent with each other. You cannot implement global capitalism in an unequal world while at the same time promoting human rights. If you take human rights seriously, then the way to actually ensure that for everyone is to create international institutions that can enforce this through the laws, through international standards and norms, and then lawyers and a judiciary system that will hold people accountable. We don't have that right now. And I don't think we will ever have it as long as we keep doing the same thing over and over again.
Meaning the U.S. I mean,
yes.
Because the U.S. has the power here to be making sure that different countries are respecting human rights, and it has abdicated its role in your eyes of doing that across the world.
Absolutely. When I see Iranians rejoicing with Israelis around the world, it makes me very sad.
It makes you sad to see them rejoicing.
It makes me sad to see them rejoicing with Israelis.
Why?
Because I feel like we're trading one freedom for another. It's like, when I see that, it's like they're saying Palestinian lives are not worth as much as Iranian lives. It makes me very sad.
There is another element to this as well. I mean, I know that you feel, Layla, that the anger directed at the Islamic regime, while acknowledging its brutality, is happening because of Islamophobia, because people in the West and to a certain degree around the world are hostile toward Muslims. Can you talk about that perspective a little bit?
So I think it is obvious from my point of view and from my experience, both as an academic and personally, that the constant conjunction of Islam with terrorism leads people to believe that Islam is synonymous with terrorism, even if it is not conscious. And that this government in Iran claims to be Islamic, I give full justification for people to look at this and say, well, if this is Islam, then I don't want any part of it. But it ignores the fact that there's 1.6 billion Muslims in the world, and there's vast diversity among Muslims. There is also a concerted effort among Iranians to rewrite their history, to sort of set it back to pre-Islamic times. So for some, bringing back Reza Pahlavi to Iran is a reset. It is throwing off sort of the colonial and imperialist Arab Muslim takeover of Iran and resetting it back to its origins. It is another nativist approach to success in Iran, I guess.
Are you saying that it is an attempt almost for having a proximity closer to whiteness in the Western world?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't call it whiteness, but it is nativist, right? So there is a point of view among Iranians that had Islam not expanded into Persia, that had Arabs not, expanded into Persia, then Iran would be much better off today than it is.
This has created a big divide in the Arab world, no?
Well, there's a common saying, I think, among Iranians that Iranians are equal opportunity racist. And I say this sort of tongue in cheek, but like when Iranians travel around the world, they refer to everybody as foreigners. They're Kharijis, no matter where they go. I mean, they're the ones that are the foreigners, but everybody else are foreigners. And I think that Iranians are somewhat justified in being proud of. We are justified in being proud of our heritage and our ethnicity and our culture, and this is something that actually unites all Iranians, irrespective of whether they identify as Muslim or not. But what's happening right now in Iran is there is this frustration and anger with a government that will send millions of dollars to Hezbollah in Lebanon, but doesn't protect its own people. And I think that frustration is justified. Like I said before, I'm in concert with, I'm sympathetic to, empathetic with the points of view that criticize this government. But I don't think the way to respond is to invite the United States and Israel to come and bomb the heck out of our country.
Do you feel that you are an outlier then when you think about your family, when you think about other people that you've talked to in the diaspora? And I mean outside of, we're pulling back from academia and from your philosopher circles to more of just folks who are wanting change.
Yeah, I don't think so, Robyn. Look, when the protests happened after the rial collapsed,
The currency in Iran, yeah.
The Trump administration boasted about sending 6,000, what is it, SmartLink? What is it, the satellite service access into Iran.
Yes, because there's no internet.
Correct. We, average people, can't connect with our families in Iran. Our families can barely reach out to us. And yet I'm listening to a woman in Tehran, crystal clear, communicating with us about her experiences in Tehran and her frustration and fear about how we're going to take over this government. How does she get out? I think that there is a measure of affirmation bias with the information that's coming out of Iran.
What do you mean by that?
I mean that the people who can call out and reach news agencies and media and so on are people who have access.
And hence have a certain perspective on
Correct.
this.
That's
and
right.
The perspective is at any cost.
That's right.
We will be free.
Look, the people who support this attack on Iran, they're strange bedfellows with the current regime because both sides, and I'm talking about the extremes now. I mean, I think the vast majority of Iranians don't land into these extremes. And by the extremes, I mean extreme in support of and lockstep with the current Velayat Faqih, the government, and the extreme of, no, we got to bring Pahlavi in and we got to, go to war until, this regime is gone. These are two extremes. And they're very, very, very strange bedfellows because both of them ignore what the majority of people want, which is just to live their life.
It's safety, it's security, it's basic necessities. It's waking up in the morning and drinking coffee and not having to worry about bombs overhead. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't want to live with freedom?
Yeah.
I mean, who doesn't want to, when they send their kids to school, to be confident that what they're learning in school is actually benefiting them? Who doesn't want to live in a country where, child marriages are not normal, right? Who doesn't want to live in a country where their voice and their opinion and they have agency? Everybody does.
Layla, I wonder if you're worried. I can't imagine you to be the type to take on this sort of "I told you so" attitude. But are you worried right now as you talk to people who are celebrating this moment? Are you worried about how it's going to end and what those conversations are going to sound like weeks or months down the road?
I think that an unstable Iran is exactly what Israel and the United States want. And so the division.
Can we stay on that for a moment?
Sure.
Why do you think that's exactly what the U.S. and Israel wants, is an unstable Iran?
Iran is the only nation in the Middle East that continues to deny the legitimacy of the state of Israel. It's the only one. And it is, as we know, it funnels money to opposition groups, Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, right? An unstable Iran is beneficial for Israel's goal, stated goal, publicly stated goal, of taking over, biblical Judea and Samaria, which is essentially the West Bank and the Golan Heights. So that's an unstable Iran is very useful. So to answer your question about down the road, we have to find a way. Iranians have to find a way to locate their common humanity. We should not give in to the Islamic extremists, nor should we give way to the Western extremists, if I can call that. I don't even know, right? They're both terrorists, in my view. Iranians have to find a way to rest in our common humanity and not allow ourselves to be torn apart.
We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to briefly talk about some ways you envision that future. This is The Metro on WDET. I'm Robyn Vincent. My guest is Layla Sachi. She's part of the Iranian diaspora. She lives here in Metro Detroit. We're discussing Israel and America's war on Iran and how she's processing everything that's happening there and in the Middle East. We'll be right back. Metro on WDET. I'm Robyn Vincent. I'm speaking with a woman from the Iranian diaspora who lives here in Metro Detroit. We're talking about America and Israel's war against Iran and what she makes of what's happening in the Middle East. Layla Sachi is an assistant professor of teaching at Wayne State University. Today, though, I'm asking her just to be in the capacity of a person, of a human, of someone who is watching with great concern about what she's seeing in her home country. Layla, yesterday, Secretary of State Marco Rubio had this to say about why the U.S. began attacking Iran.
If we stood and waited for that attack to come first before we hit them, we would suffer much higher casualties. And so the president made the very wise decision. We knew that there was going to be an Israeli action. We knew that that would precipitate an attack against American forces. And we knew that if we didn't preemptively go after them before they launched those attacks, we would suffer higher casualties and perhaps even higher those killed. And then we would all be here answering questions about why we knew that and didn't act.
We knew there was going to be an Israeli action. This is quite a stunning admission from Secretary of State Marco Rubio. And so I don't want to breeze past this in any way. I want to know what you were thinking when you heard him say this.
I guess part of me is like, well, this is usual. Like, this is, look, I mean, not only did the United States have this understanding of this preemptive attack from Israel, but Iran has been preparing for an attack at least since September. And so it's weird. It's weird to say, well, Israel was going to attack, so we attacked first so that the U.S. wouldn't attack Israel. I mean,
so you don't even believe that this is necessarily the reason?
Oh, no. I think that they're scrambling to make up stuff to justify the fact that they have no plan. Iran has been sort of planning and sort of playing this sort of chess, if this happens, we're going to do that. If that happens, at least since September. And I mean, if anybody thinks that Kushner and Witkoff are the actual representatives of the United States and peace talks, I mean, that is just crazy.
As in, they were the ones negotiating with Iran about a nuclear deal.
And they're not stupid. I mean, they know that this is just
that
a
wasn't
smoke
serious,
screen.
is what you're saying. I wonder if you could talk about, Layla, the weight that you feel on your shoulders of being an Iranian American, watching people who don't seem to know very much about the Middle East make all kinds of policies that are going to have profound impacts on people in your home country, a country that, as you mentioned, you know but you don't know. Mm. You have connections to, and yet you are through and through an American. You grew up here. You came to Canada when you were 1 year old.
Yeah.
And so you have to live in this world of duality. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I often think that, that old saying, a little information is a dangerous thing. We do a piss poor job of educating our children about the Middle East. Our education system just doesn't seem to think that it's important to learn about the 1953 coup in Iran.
Or even ancient civilizations that preceded the modern nations in the Middle East.
Exactly right. And then I think to myself, look, the human rights abuses in Iran are not unique to Iran, right? I think when we are focusing on another country, it frees us from looking at ourselves.
Oh, can you say more about that? I mean, are you speaking specifically to what is happening domestically in the U.S.?
Surely. I mean, if there's a foreign enemy to rally around, it sort of covers over the pesky problems that we have day to day, and I put that in air quotes, right? Here in the United States, our poverty rate, that we're gutting our education system, ICE, our immigration system, our, dare I say, the Epstein files. Like, if we have this common enemy to rally around, then, and I say this at the same time, I want to make clear that this in no way diminishes the very real oppressions and experiences of Iranians in Iran. I just think that if we want to take human rights seriously, then we have to accept that there are human rights violations in Iran, as there are human rights violations in Turkey, as there are human rights violations in Saudi Arabia, as there are human rights violations here in the United States, right? And seriously think about, how do we create international institutions that will work towards the freedom of everyone? And that requires dismantling the power structures that currently exist in the world.
Leila Sachi is an assistant professor of teaching at Wayne State University. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me today.
It's the Metro on WDET. I'm Robyn Vincent. Coming up, voicing dissent is protected free speech in the U.S., but what's the most effective way to protest? What's appropriate? My next guest says respectability politics are not the answer. We'll find out why next. Stay with us.